All right, it is that time. It's 12:04. We're going to go ahead and get started. Participants will join in and out of this conversation, but that's all right. We're so glad that you're here. Good afternoon. My name is Maria Brown Spence. I'm the program manager for the Entrepreneurs Foundation, and we are excited that you have joined us for our May Belated Mothers Edition Culturati Live, Resilient Families, Companies Supporting Women and Families in the Workplace. All right. Here with me in this virtual space, I have my amazing panelists, Cate Prescott, Annette Alexander, and Sherrie Nguyen. All right, Annette, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, sure. So I'm Annette Alexander. I mentioned I live in Austin. I have lived here for 7 years. Moved from Europe. I work for WP Engine, which is headquartered here in Austin. I've been there for a little bit over 4 years as the chief people officer there. I have spent my whole career in HR, so always really been committed to creating great workplaces for everyone. And I loved the opportunity to do this internationally. So about half my career has been in Europe, and the other half has been in the United States, and mostly in tech. I started in large companies, so kind of have that experience, and then I sort of last 7 years moved into sort of mid-size, more scale-up tech companies, which has been awesome. And like I said, committed to creating, great workplaces for all. And personally, I grew up in Norway, lived in many different countries, and now happy to be in Texas, where I live with my husband and my 8-year-old daughter. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Annette. Looking forward to learning more about you through the conversation. We'll throw it along to Cate and then Sherrie.
Thank you. Well, I can follow Annette quite well, actually, because I've had most of my career in Europe. As I mentioned earlier, I've only been in Austin in the US for 4 years, but the rest of my career was most definitely mainly in the UK, a little bit in APAC, a little bit in LATAM, but mainly in Europe. So I'm Cate Prescott. I'm the SVP and CPO for NI, who you may know as National Instruments. We changed our name and our branding last year to NI. It's a test and measurement organization. It deals with hardware and software. We're headquartered in Austin. We have been for the last 40 years. We're a homegrown company, but we also have 7,000 employees who are scattered globally over 40 different countries. So I get to the pleasure of being able to travel a lot to see the different environments and different cultures and the way things happen differently in different countries. So that's a passion for me anyway, to understand culture and understand how people orient their own environments. I guess if I think about me personally, I'm married to Tony. I have 2 kids, a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. Who frequently come in and interrupt. So apologies in advance if they do that today. I really hope they don't. And I guess my mantra in terms of what positive footprints I want to leave on this world, I really want to help people to be the best that they can possibly be. So that would be something that I think I would want to have as a legacy as I leave this world at some point.
What a wonderful legacy to leave.
Hi, and I am Sherrie Nguyen. Thanks so much for having me today. My pronouns are she, her. As I mentioned, I live in Austin, Texas, born and raised in Houston. I am a wife to my high school sweetheart. We've been together for, a long time. I am mother to 4.5-year-old Amaya, and I am the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants, first in my family to graduate college. I am currently a senior manager of product marketing at Indeed.com. I'm also the founder and regional co-chair of the Parents and Caregivers Inclusion Resource Group at Indeed. And our mission is to help all people get jobs. My personal mission is to help caregivers and return to the workforce and to help employers retain them. And I also mentor with Breakthrough Central Texas. Fun fact, my mentee, who I've been with since she was in 7th grade, just walked the UT graduation this a couple of days ago. And it's really incredible. It's a proud mom moment. And I think my life is just kind of flashing before my eyes thinking of my daughter walking her college graduation. I'm also a mentor with Young Women's Alliance. And for fun, I practice yoga, meditation, I swim, I love to read, and I love Cate's mantra. I think mine right now is taken from Anna from Frozen. It's just do the next right thing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing more about yourselves and being here with us today. So again, I said this is all about audience participation. So we have a poll that we would like you to answer. Just take a few moments and then we will get started with the conversation. All right, the poll has been launched. I'll give you a few minutes. And again, any questions, insight, don't be afraid to use that chat. All right, so we're at 84% completion on that survey. So 2 of the questions were, is it acceptable for parents to hold a child on a Zoom call, or is it unprofessional? 88% said professional, 13% said unprofessional. Second question, is finding childcare a financial burden? 88% said yes, 13% said no. I'd like to hear from my panelists. Do you think that this poll would have had these same numbers pre-COVID, or do you think that people are more understanding with having children? Of course, you wouldn't have them come to the meeting, right? Or maybe you would. Do you think that these numbers have changed because of COVID? What are your thoughts?
Yes, big time. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but we didn't have as many Zoom calls before. And if there were, Zoom calls, I would say that you would not have very rarely would you have your children on the Zoom call because, you needed to kind of have care for your children. And now I think it's just part of the way we do business, and you encourage it because you get to know the whole person and their family. And it's a lovely distraction from being on Zoom 10 hours a day to see a child or hear a dog or, whatever it is, you get an insight into their family. So, I can only respond from our company, but I think that it would have been answered differently prior to COVID.
I totally agree, Annette. I think what has been wonderful about this is the opportunity to see people in their homes and to see more of the whole person. So kids coming in, animals coming in, all sorts of things happening. And that's just made it more rich in terms of understanding and getting to know our employees, I think. So I've really enjoyed actually the opportunity to do this. We were very much a presenteeism company beforehand. We were all in the office, and it was very much about who you were in the office. And you can't just be who you are in the office when you're online with other things happening to you. So I think it's democratized to some degree the environment and has enabled people to have a level playing field and be more included as part of being online.
Yeah, and I'll add to both of their points. I feel like parenting was very invisible before the pandemic, or it was easy to make it invisible. I wouldn't know if somebody was a parent unless they decided to bring a picture of their family and put it on their desk. And even so, I don't know if that was commonplace. I think the definition of professional and unprofessional has to be redefined, and I think it has been over the past year. And we're in the midst of a, I would say, civil rights resurgence. And I think for some families, there's really no choice but to show up this way. And especially if you don't have support from any other person in the household to care for your children, this is your reality and this is what is. So I'm sure we'll get into talks around diversity and inclusion today, but if we want to support a more inclusive workforce, then to both Cate and Annette's point, we have to embrace people as they are.
Now I'd like to switch the question up a little bit. Now, I know we're more compassionate about children, our family members joining us in the Zoom calls and spaces and things like that. What are your thoughts as people return to the workplace and might have to bring a child into a meeting in the office? Do you think that we'll see the same compassion from our supervisors, from our leadership, or do you think that it will go back to pre-COVID when that was an absolute no?
I can speak on this from the perspective of Indeed. So I felt really lucky that we had this office that had like a game room space, kind of very typical tech company with like video games and pool table, and kids are always welcome in that space. We used to have high chairs in our dining space. And so we welcomed bringing families into all of those common areas. I've also seen coworkers watch kids while others are in a meeting or have to step away in the event somebody's staying home from school. So I hope that we see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think things will change. I think they have to change. I think we can't go back to our pre-COVID world, because there's a different level of expectation now from our employees. And I think that's real and something that we have to respond to, both as employees ourselves and also as employers. I do think from an NI perspective, we've tried to work with people like the Thinkery who come in to run some of their summer camps at our facilities to help to enable access to childcare for our parents, excuse me, particularly during the summer holidays. And I think that's more that we're going to need to do to lean into some of those things.
It's funny because I don't think, prior to COVID, we were used to seeing, children on Zoom calls, just, so that's a change. But I think we were used to seeing children in the office because when you didn't have childcare, it was always okay to bring children in, and everyone knew that. And it started with the CEO who would always bring her 2 daughters in when, school was out or there was something going on, and we would always talk to them or, help them out. And I would do the same. I bring my daughter in, and everyone would always, help me out. And that was just a really fun way to get to know their families. Did everyone do that? And was it comfortable for absolutely everyone? I'm not sure. We never had a policy or never spoke openly about it. It was just sort of a thing that, was okay to do. But I will say that, Sherrie, I like your, what you do at Indeed, that you have high chairs and you kind of, are taking this to like the next level and really putting things in place that are really, welcoming for the entire family, right? And having, little signs like that in the office. So I took note of that idea. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. I think signs and symbols in relation to what's acceptable and not acceptable are really important. And something like high chairs being part of the kind of restaurant or kind of casual area, I think makes a huge difference. That's a great sign and symbol. Congratulations Indeed for doing that.
I think those are some great tips for employees that are watching from other companies, maybe something they can throw in the suggestion box as many of us return to work. Are you guys currently back in the office, or what does it look like for each of your companies as we move into a kind of post-COVID world?
So I can speak to that first if you like. So I've had the pleasure, I'm not sure, of being the executive sponsor for our crisis team as we've looked to try and orient how we've handled COVID across the last 12 months. It's been an interesting journey for sure in relation to what we've been trying to navigate. I think we've already said to our people that they don't have to come back until the end of September, because we're looking to make sure that summer holidays are covered. We don't know what's going on with childcare there. And then between September and December, they can have conversations with their managers to decide how they want to do that. And in the meantime, as we start to look at 2022 and beyond, we're doing something called Workplace for Everyone, which is a pilot program. And we're standing up different pilots across the organization to understand how to test and measure and experiment with different ways of working. So I'll give you an example. I'm currently on a WFE pilot myself as part of the executive leadership team. We're working from the office Mondays and Tuesdays, and then from home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we're looking to figure out how we utilize our synchronous time during that Monday and Tuesday, and then our asynchronous time at the back end of the week. We've had feedback from our employees, some of which are desperate to stay remote, some of which like the idea of additional flexibility and want to make sure that they are able really to control their own environment and their own way of getting work done, which I think is probably where we need to lean into most. And then others that have really missed the workplace. And we've had critical workers on site throughout the whole of the last 12 months. Which, you know, we can't kind of forget. Those people have been kind of keeping everything going for us, particularly in our manufacturing environments. So we have knowledge workers, we have manufacturing workers trying to figure out what that looks like. The answer to us is that we don't know. And so that's why we're taking the time for the rest of this year to really pilot, to test, to measure, to check, to adjust. And then at the end of this year, we'll decide what our kind of stance is for the next year and beyond. But I do think it has to be really foundationally in the hybrid world. I don't think we're ever going to go back to a situation where everyone is always at the office, which is really where we came from. And I think that flexibility is really key to enabling women to come back into that workplace and to be able to orient the workplace in a different way that suits their needs better, rather than how perhaps we were set up previously.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Okay, thank you. For Indeed, we're not going back until September of this year, or that's the first that people will be required to go back into the office. We are rolling out something I think is interesting, and I'm not going to take credit for this because I'm the one here that's not in HR, but we're rolling out a new policy in which you opt in either to fully on-site, fully remote, or hybrid, and you opt in yearly like benefits, so you can choose what you want. We've changed it so that there's only, I think, 1% of roles at Indeed. It's a company of 10,000 people. 1% of roles are required to be in office. It's primarily office managers, IT managers, people who need to be on site to access the building. And then for everybody else, it's optional to pick a hybrid or flex policy or fully remote. I will say for us, I think there's definitely instances, I know in our Tokyo office, some people based on their living situation were really unhappy working from home and want to be back. I would say for other people like myself as a mom whose daycare is 5 minutes away from home, but my commute is 40 minutes, I'd rather be at home. And I like that we're trying to balance the two. I would say to the point Cate made, I think for me, I'd love to see us move to fully remote and figure out a way to do that with like maybe coming together at certain times of the year for all hands or team-wide or department-wide ad hoc meetings. I say that because in the former pre-COVID world, we have a lot of employees who are remote and are in different office locations since we have so many offices. And I found that whenever I took a remote stance in a meeting, like something was happening in San Francisco, I decided to stay here, I felt excluded. I felt like people had their backs to me or they were talking in the room or I couldn't hear as well. So I don't know how we manage hybrid. I think it's going to be really challenging. And I think that I love the test and pilot and measure idea because we're going to have to figure out it's the tools, technology, but it's the culture of inclusivity. And I think it's going to take extra work and extra self-awareness to be able to meet in a hybrid way.
This is really interesting to hear what y'all are doing, because we all have probably been really wrapped up in internally what we're all doing. But like y'all, you know, we have talked about this, debated this, you know, every week for all the months since COVID hit. And essentially what we've learned is that our employees have really, you know, with the situation being the situation, they have really loved the flexibility. So I think what we always heard before COVID was, can we work more from home? Can we just have a day per week where everyone can work from home? Can I go fully virtual? Can I move to Florida? You know, we always, and we never really had a clear policy for it. It was kind of more bespoke, right? So now that everyone got to experience this, the feedback is like, oh my gosh, you know, I can jog in the middle of the day, I can pick up my child, I can take out my pet, I can do my laundry and still being effective, I can eat healthier, whatever. Like in general, you know, I feel more connected to my family. So that's been really good. What we have also gotten feedback on is like, yeah, but you know, I really miss the togetherness and our culture, and that's really missing. And I'm feeling that maybe now it feels like what was so special was us coming together, and now my job feels more like a job than what it did before, right? And so because of this feedback, these two pieces of feedback, of course we got more, but those are the most important. We've decided that we're going to come back in a hybrid way, right? So instead of, you know, traditional offices, we have created hubs, so global hubs, and everyone is allocated to a hub. Some people live far away from a hub, some live close to a hub. But the idea is that you come into the hub minimum of, you know, 4 times a year, often for all hands and things like that you were talking about, Sherrie. But depending on your need and the expectations of your team. So different teams have different expectations. And essentially you come in for collaboration, you know, fun, social community, those types of things, but you don't need to come in to sit and do your work. You're expected to kind of, you know, do your individual work, you know, at home. Very few jobs have to kind of come in every day. So we're trying to, you know, do the best of both worlds here, right? So of course it's a new thing, you know, we haven't called it a pilot, but essentially it is, because it's new, and we will adjust as we see, oh, we need more of this or less of that. Because of, you know, COVID regulations also, you know, everyone isn't going to be able to go in every day like we used to. Some offices, yes, some not. So we're also moving to a policy where no one has a desk anymore, designated desk. So, you know, you have like this little cute app where you kind of book your seat for the day. And that's also how you get, you know, you take your, you know, health measurements, and then that's how you also get into the building. That's your badging, and that's how you get your parking for the day. So we kind of redone all that infrastructure. So it's brand new. You know, we're excited about it. We believe in the community, and we believe this model is going to do it. But of course, we will learn as the year goes by, and we will go back end of August, you know, to coordinate with school. But if someone is not comfortable going back this year, we're not making anyone go back, because we understand that every employee has a different situation.
I'd love to pile on, if you don't mind, just for a couple of things. I think redefining the office and what it's there for and what it's not there for is something to think about as an employer. So for us, we've talked about it being around creativity, around connection, and celebration. So if you're doing one of those 3 things, probably the office is the best environment for you to be in. Not necessarily, but probably. If you're not doing one of those 3 things, then really you can do what you're doing wherever you are able to do it from, as long as your role allows you. And I think about, wouldn't it be wonderful to have an employee-driven approach to flexible working that really empowers employees to choose where and when they do the work that they do, and that really destigmatizing the flexibility, because I do feel that flexibility has been seen in a bad light rather than it just in whatever it is. And if you say that flexibility is going to be your working norm, then that stops any stigmatization in relation to flexibility.
That's a great point.
All great ideas. I especially like how you have the app to where you can select where you want to sit. Some days you might just want to be by yourself, or sometimes you might want to be a little more social. So I think that's wonderful too, as people even think about we've been isolated for a while. That's going to take some time to integrate back into the workplace and be social again. Like that is going to take time. And with all of these questions that we had an insight, I think it's now time for a little bit of audience participation. I have another poll related to some of the insight that was shared. So I'm going to launch that now. First question, how do you prefer to work? Remote, in the office, hybrid, some days at home, some days in the office. Did you have more distractions at home? And this one's a multiple choice. Yes, other families working from home or family members. Yes, slow Wi-Fi or technical issues. Yes, not as productive when we go to the coffee or make our lunch, or no, I figured out a process. All right, votes are coming in. Let's see who will be a millionaire as we wait. Does anyone remember that TV show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I never got a lot of the answers right. All right, so far we are trending, let's see, remote, 31%. Okay, someone's answering now, switched it around. Remote, 29%. In the office, 6%, one person. Hybrid, some days at home, some days at work, 65%. Did you have more distractions at home? Yes, 35%. Yes, slow Wi-Fi or technical issues, 6%. Yes, not as productive, 18%. No, I figured out a process, 29%.
Yeah.
How was that for you all? Is that pretty, which one was more on par for you all?
I think
And
for me,
as
it was
with,
yes
I'm
and
sure
no.
everybody, we've been surveying our employees almost to death on this topic to try and figure out what preferences are and how we work towards those preferences. So those stats are incredibly similar to what we've seen in terms of how many want to have a working environment that's remote permanently. Ours was 31%. I think the survey was 29. And then hybrid scores pretty highly as well in relation to what people think would work well for them. So yeah, very on point with what I've seen from our employees at NI.
Yes, likewise. I think there are very few people who, I think 10% or less, who actually want to go back, 8 to 5 in an office. Like, times have moved on, that it's not a thing anymore. Like no one is gonna want to do that.
Yeah, and I actually changed my own vote based on what Annette said. I would love to do hybrid if it's like a handful of times a year, or to Cate's point, if it's around connection, creativity, celebration, I'm going to take that with me. If those are the reasons, I'm all aboard for in office, but I think primarily remote for me.
And in terms of navigating this new hybrid, fully remote work environment, what advice would you give to new, soon to be COVID? We're going to have this whole COVID generation of children, but soon to be parents. And I'd like to direct that to Sherrie first. With your organization, your ERG, maybe what you've seen throughout the pandemic, or what you're putting in place to help new parents either navigate back to the office or have a new environment at home.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've seen a lot of COVID babies. It's a funny thing to say, but just, babies born in COVID is so interesting, but also so similar, because I feel like you tend to just isolate anyway to protect everybody. We have a 16-week parental leave policy, agnostic of gender, and we have a 4-week ramp up where you work part-time. So I guess all in all, 20 weeks total, if you look at it that way. And I think what I've seen is it's so interesting. I feel like the concept of being able to nurse while you're on a Zoom call and turn off your video, or if you're listening, I think that's really incredible. I ideally, I think of like the World Health Organization's guidance for 1 year, for mother and baby, or father and baby, or caregiver to bond and be able to help with early development. And in the US, we're far below that, way far below that. We don't even have a paid leave policy federally. But what I've seen is that with working from home, there's just more access to be able to feed, more access to maybe keep your child, options to keep your child out of childcare. I know my own daughter was sick for like a year and a half straight, which meant my husband and I were also getting sick and passing sickness back and forth, which means I wasn't productive at work. And so I think that having the flexibility to do what you need to do and to manage your caregiving situation, your feeding situation, I think is entirely helpful. So we've seen a lot more flexibility. We've been empowering parents to ease themselves back in and just to really set boundaries. And I think if you can avoid commute times, things like that, all of it really adds up. So we've been doing what we can to really support parents in that way and advocate for them.
What about you, Cate? Anything else to add to that point of soon to be new COVID parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think I compare my experience to having lived in Europe and having had my children in the UK. I had 9 months off with my first child and 10 months off with my second one. So to come to the US and to see how different it is, it was pretty shocking, to be perfectly honest. And I do think that as government hasn't stepped up, then employers have to step up to support working parents. If you think about some of the statistics in relation to the number of females that are coming out of the workplace based on some of the situation that COVID has created for them, we need to redress that balance in some way, and one way is to support them through more family-friendly policies from an employer point of view. I'd love to see it legislated, but I'm not sure we're going to get to that. So in the meantime, we have to put the onus and the emphasis, I think, on employers to do the right thing for their female employees and caregivers generally.
Yeah, that's great. You know what? One of the things that we pride ourselves at WP Engine, we say, you know, we really want to be that workplace where you can have your career, but you can have your family too. You don't want to be this place that, okay, I think I'm about to start a family, so I need to look for another job because it's so hard to work here. Like, you never want to be that place. So one of the things that I really make sure, especially, you know, with hiring employees that might be, you know, I kind of get the feeling that, you know, they might be thinking about it. I bring it up and say, hey, you know, we support you. And if you decide to have a family, we're so excited for you. And are just really open on this topic because it's something that's on a lot of people's mind, and we want you to have a family. So, you know, so I'll start with that premise. Like you, Cate, I was also, you know, shocked by, of course, the parental leave here and how it's behind. Also had 9 months with my daughter, which I appreciated. I was living in France at the time. And when I came over to the US, that was sort of like one of the things I was like, okay, what is the parental policy where I'm going to work? And, you know, Sherrie, you'll be really proud to know this. One of the companies that I really looked at in changing our parental leave to 16-week full pay was Indeed. Because I thought y'all were doing such a good, and then, you know, the part-time after that, I thought y'all were doing such a great job with that. And it, you know, was very, very thoughtful. Also, it was aligned, frankly, what I got in France. It was 16-week of full pay. I could just take more time unpaid. So I was like, that's kind of how I explained it, like it's pretty good. And so we really looked at Indeed as one of the companies and put that in place several years ago now. And that, I think, has really, really helped our parents to take the time, and then also easing back in. And then more than anything, understanding what each new parent's needs are and their family's needs are, and putting in, you know, bespoke solutions or helping them with what they need. I think that is the most important thing. Yes, the overall programs are, but then the next step is, how can we help you on your journey here at the company? How can we best support you? I think that line of communication is everything.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Annette, for calling that out. I am proud of Indeed too. Even given that, I think we can still do better, as both of you wonderful women have experienced a much longer leave. I definitely think the US overall can do better. I'd love to share a couple of things that Indeed changed during COVID to support working parents, because I think it's been really incredible. This started before COVID, but we partner with Maven as one of our healthcare tech platforms, and they support parents from fertility all the way through returning to work with sleep coaching and lactation consultants and things like that. So Maven has been our go-to benefits, and we've rolled it out globally. It used to just be in the US, but rolled out globally over last year. And some of the new policies that we have rolled out are the ERG, which has been a community and just support group for parents and caregivers. We've also rolled out work from home stipends that can be used for childcare, as well as we've gotten approval on budget to backfill people while on parental leave. This is something that was really just a Band-Aid approach before. Everybody kind of fend for yourself. And then we expanded our bereavement leave to include miscarriage and stillbirth, taking a playbook from the Prime Minister of New Zealand when this happened as well. We also added home birthing to our insurance coverage when people didn't feel comfortable going into the hospital to give birth. We've also added some mental health resources, support link through our employee assistance program. And for me, actually, Aetna covered therapy for free for an entire year. So that was great. We've also added U days, so 1 day off each month, just to kind of force people to take PTO, because we were seeing that people weren't. And last is just shifting this culture of flexibility with managers, as we've already talked about, seeing people on Zoom and knowing the struggle and the burnout, just having more conversations with managers about how to support employees.
That's awesome. We've done similar, I think. So we've also, our women's ERG has been going for a long time, and they are an incredible source of support and inclusion for our employees. And so we've been leveraging them to help us to understand what the needs of our employees are. We've done some additional work with our EAP that also includes mental health, exactly the same as yourself, Sherrie, that was rolled out globally during the COVID time. We also put some flexible options in play across the COVID pandemic. So that allowed employees to go on leave of absence or part-time working schedule, but to retain the full benefits that they have with the organisation. That went down well with our employees, particularly those who were caregivers and needed to step away from work for a period of time. We added 6 weeks paid leave to our family leave policy as well, to kind of give some respite there. And then similar to you, we have Virgin Pulse that we use as our platform, but we call it NI Thrive, which is our wellbeing program across NI. And that platform creates journeys, and one of the journeys is for new parents. It's a sleeping well journey. So sleep for parents, their pregnancy, they go through trimester 1, 2, and 3, and healthy habits in relation to expecting mums. So that there's support for being able to find access to information for new parents that we didn't have previously. So, you know, there's a lot to be thankful for in some ways for having COVID, because I think it has kickstarted a lot of requirements from employees and a different level of expectation and need from them that we're responding to as well.
This is awesome. Everything both of your organizations are doing, and it feels like we all have a lot of overlap in how we're thinking about it, and how we're, you know, supporting our employees, and how we're supporting, you know, women and parents, and I think that's awesome. And I think we all have, you know, our wonderful ERGs in common as well. One of the things, y'all mentioned it, but I'm just going to take it a step further. It's important of rest and taking time off during COVID, right? So it seems like both of your organizations really, you know, encourage that. And we did too. You know, we kept saying, take time off, You know, you need it, you deserve it. I know you're starting your days earlier, they're going longer, you're maybe teaching your children on, you know, on Zoom, or you have distractions. It's tough, take time off. And then what we learned from our employees is that, yeah, I hear you, but the business doesn't slow down and I'm stressed. So we were like, all right, so how can we help that? So we started doing wellness days quarterly for the whole company, so no one works. And I know it's quarterly, it's not weekly, it's not monthly. You kind of like have a business to run too, so you got to have to balance it a little bit. But the feedback on that has been like amazing. And, you know, one of the top things employees talk to me about are now, you're not going to stop those wellness days, are you? Because I never gotten better sort of rest and recharge for myself than those days. And then also what we try to do is to sometimes make them when like kids are in school, that is not always tied to a bank holiday weekend. So you get like a Monday off and maybe kids are in school or doing something else and you get like time to yourself, which is, you know, rare for a lot of us here, right? And so I just wanted to share that because it's something that we did, and I underestimated how successful it was going to be, right? And we have open PTO, you know, we encourage it, we do all of those things, but it's now I think, you know, I can never take those away. We just have to keep going. So I just wanted to share that for anyone here on the call, that has been worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've done similar. So we've had days, and we've also tried weeks where our executive leadership team are basically not allowed to send any emails, so that they encourage people to switch off, because there's that always on thing that happens, particularly I think when you're at home, when you're trying to orient the work day, but also trying to have some balance in your life. And so the integration of work and life is definitely something that we've been thinking a lot about, but we love the kind of weekly holidays as well. The other thing that I've done, and I have to say I've stolen this with pride, so I can't take any credit for myself, but under my my signage strip, I work flexibly and sometimes send emails outside of typical working hours. Please don't feel that you need to read, acknowledge, or respond outside of hours that suit you, which is really just to try and signal to people that, you know, it might be for me that I want to have dinner with my family, or I'm doing something with my kids from 4 till 6, and so I'm not working, but then I might kind of get back to my emails at 7 or 8 and I might send something out. But because of my position, I don't want people to feel, oh my gosh, I've got an email, I need to respond. So that was kind of deliberately put in to try and kind of make sure people feel okay about flexing their day in the way that they want to flex it, and using the time that they want to use that works best for them.
Oh, I like that. Do you feel that's worked really well?
I've got some really, really good emails back from people saying, OMG, you know, I really love that you're acknowledging the fact that working patterns are different for different people based on their individual circumstances. So all of our leadership team have put that underneath their signature strips now, just to encourage the fact that they don't expect people to be on all of the time and responding all the time to them.
I love that. There's one other thing that I like to pick up on that you mentioned, which was like you said, you sort of encouraged, you know, executives to, I don't know how you said it, like there's less email or, you know, meetings or, you know, like something like that. Like,
yeah, basically to work asynchronously.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking about that is we were looking at, are there other ways we can, you know, give people more, you know, time to work, have more flexibility, care for their families. And so we instituted meeting-free afternoons after lunch, Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So whatever you need to, you know, you have that time to work, care for others, whatever you need, right? But I found that it was tricky. It was tricky to adhere to it, to really, really make it stick. And so I was curious, like, how did you make it stick? You know, advice for others, because I think it's important to have these periods in our schedule.
Yeah, I totally agree. we're we're trying hard to do in part of our WFE trials or our pilots, that kind of break between what work activity really is synchronous activity and what is asynchronous activity, so that we can be more prescriptive almost in terms of the work that really doesn't need to get done other than when you decide to do it. And that could be at any time, hence then the flexibility message. In terms of making sure that the executive leadership team have that asynchronous time, we've actually blocked weeks where they are either on holiday or working asynchronously, so that people know. And there's 2 weeks a year that we've used, so that people know that they can also take that time off, or they can have a quiet week where they can catch up with things because they know they're not going to get lots of different emails. But I agree with you, orienting that kind of synchronous versus asynchronous activity and trying to create spaces within the diary to enable those is difficult when you're trying to also make it consistent across a whole organization. We're still experimenting with it. I don't think for a second that we've cracked that nut yet. But if we do, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I'd love to know if you crack it, because, still trial and error, but it's so important to have this time. So I'm sure we will keep evolving it. Yeah. Thank you.
This is what we wanted to have these conversations for, to get insight from others that can be used throughout many companies. But as we have a panel of amazing women, identifying as women, I'd like to go into a question that kind of alarmed me when I saw the statistic. Before 2020, research had consistently found that women and men leave their companies at comparable rates. However, due to the challenges created by the COVID-19 crisis, as many as 2 million women are considering leaving the workplace. If these women feel forced to leave the workplace, we'll end up with far fewer women in leadership, such as yourselves, and far fewer women on track to be future leaders. What are your thoughts when you hear that number? And I'd like to throw that over to Sherrie first.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this has been in all of the headlines, right? I think I see like 5 million women have exited the workforce. I know by count, 2.5 million women have left the workforce and want to return. And this is a huge focus for Indeed. And for me specifically, I kind of like to adjust the preamble a little bit. What I saw is, this is before COVID, is 43% of new mothers in STEM roles were leaving their job after their firstborn, and 23% of new fathers. And that working moms have been spending more time on caregiving today than stay-at-home moms in the 70s. So it leaves me to believe a lot of things, is that work is, was always incongruent with caregiving. The workplace was created by men for men, and we try to shoehorn a working mother into that paradigm, and it didn't really work. I think that there are a lot of things that have resulted from this, I think driven this, right? Like high earning moms lose 10% of their earnings with every kid, whereas fathers get a 6% bonus. And there have been studies that show that. I think when we look at the pay equity for mothers, it's 75 cents to the dollar for every white woman to white man. But if you break that down by Latinx, it's 46 cents to the dollar. Native American women or mothers, 50 cents, Black mothers, 52 cents. And so there's really a lot here, right? There's a lot to kind of unpack. I also use this term, the maternal wall, when colleagues view mothers or pregnant women as less competent, less committed to their jobs. There's been research and studies that show if you put PTA, Parent Teacher Association, on your resume, you don't get as many callbacks as somebody without that line. So I think there's been a lot of issues, and I think Eugene posted in the comments earlier that we lack policy to really support people. We don't personally, we're so privileged in our companies that we've already spouted off all these policies, but there's this very real reality of what's been going on. And I think that women, we've adjusted our careers more than men in the past. And in order to disrupt this trend and get women back into the workforce, we really need to adjust our culture to make work great for women. And I think that's disrupting the narrative that caregiving is a woman's job. I believe it's everyone's job, and I believe it deserves pay. I think the reality is millennials are now caregivers more than ever due to COVID. And so if we expand outside of parenthood just to caregiving and how many people have gotten sick or passed away over the last year, millennials are burnt out because they're doing multiple jobs and caregiving is a job. We just don't view it that way in the US. So, you know, we really need these policies like dependable childcare, safely reopening schools, gender pay equity, family leave, sick leave, access to healthcare, quality, dependable childcare. We also need, though, to invest in upskilling women and sponsoring them so that they can come back into roles that make sense. Because a lot of these women left, they were on the front lines. They were Black and brown women. They were exposed to COVID and they're not in the roles that we advocate for, right? So if we want to get these people jobs, how do we do that? We have to upskill them. We have to sponsor them into roles that traditionally they may have been kept out of. And I think there's just a lot of systemic issues that we really need to take a look at ourselves and examine our own bias in order to make things more equitable.
I mean, listening to some of those stats, it's horrific, right, where we are right now. But I would say that maybe the very thing that's taking people out of the women out of the workplace today could be the opportunity for us to reinvent work for women going forward. So I do think this is a pivotal moment that we need to grab hold of as employers and as a country and as a government to enable our women to be in the workplace in a way that enables them to have both things. You know, there's a lot of movement from work-life balance to work-life integration to work-life harmonization, where work becomes part of life, life becomes part of work. And I think as we've tried to split those two things artificially and balance those two, we've never been able to do it. So I think we have to think completely differently about work for the future and what that actually means and how we can actually make it more employee-centric for work activity to get done in the context of flexibility that enables people to achieve what they want to, both from a career and from a personal perspective.
I'd like to just add, you know, one thing that might sound really, really simplistic, but what I think is really important is the role a manager plays in everyone's life, right? It doesn't matter who you are, but so in the case of women, knowing that your manager have your back, having a plan for your career within the company and that your manager knows that plan and is supportive and broader leadership also has that awareness and supports it, I think it's everything. And then understanding the person's full life and where they need flexibility and where we need to shift our thinking and not being rigid about it, and talking about that and remove barriers and maybe reprioritize things to be able to get more females in leadership roles. We can't just do things the traditional way, but we have to have the sponsorship of all managers, and it's the most important job of one of the most important job of every manager. And I think we've failed women there. And I think that is a big opportunity to step up, and it's an easy one. We can have all the policies in the world, but if your manager doesn't have your back and doesn't really care about your career, it doesn't matter, right? So I just wanted to say that because it's kind of back to the basics a little bit.
Annette, I think you're absolutely right. And Helena asked a question in the chat about what can we do to get people to adopt the policies? It's not the policies. Like, it's a huge myth that we don't have the policies.
Sure.
And it's culture, right? It's culture. And in Japan, where there is this narrative of like the Japanese businessman, there was an initiative by the government to try to get them to take paid parental leave. But in order to do that, there was a whole cultural issue where men are seen as workers, men are seen as breadwinners, right? And women were home. And so they were incentivizing and coaching and normalizing taking that leave. So I think that Annette is right. We have to do that as a manager level. You're the one that we look to show how we should operate in the workforce. But I think she's right too, that there's not enough support and representation at that level, which means if we look at our most junior workers, we need to equip them and upskill them and sponsor them to be first-time managers. And I think one of the biggest problems in tech is that we promote people based on subject matter expertise and not enough on emotional intelligence. And those are very two different skill sets. So what I say is put moms in management roles. Who else is kind and empathetic and compassionate and able to get shit done? It's moms. So
that is so
Absolutely agree.
Oh my goodness. Well, as we are running out of time, I knew this would be an insightful conversation. You all are amazing women taking charge in your companies and just in the community in general. Thank you so much for providing this insight. I wish that we had more time, but we will share this recording in an after event email. We will also share feedback and insight in our Culturati magazine. So if you have not subscribed, please do so. You can find us on social media, Entrepreneurs Foundation or Culturati Summit. If you have any additional questions, feedback, or insight, please send us an email. You can find our information on your Eventbrite registration, and make sure that you connect with our wonderful panelists on LinkedIn. And again, all of this information will be shared in the after event recap. And I know you're probably tired of surveys at this point, but when you receive that after event recap, there will be a survey which helps us get insight on what discussions you would like to have and how insightful this one was for you. So again, thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday afternoon. To our wonderful panelists, again, thank you for your insight and time. And we look forward to our next Culturati Live taking place in June, so stay tuned.